Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this month's special and exclusive interview for the Leadership Circle at Fit Summit. It's a pleasure to welcome Ryan Hogan, the CEO for Asia Pacific at Les Mills. Les Mills need no introduction at all. Ryan has been in this industry for decades, which is a good thing, trust me, and he's here to share some great insight. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ross.
Let's jump straight in. The last 12 months, it's been difficult for everybody, and of course, Les Mills is no exception. What reflections and what thoughts come up, if I were to say, share the last 12 months about what's happening at Les Mills, and specifically about Les Mills in Asia Pacific?
Yeah, I mean, heck of a ride, right? We're as a key, we like to think of ourselves as key partners to the clubs that we service and the instructors that we service across Asia Pacific and the whole world. I mean, when their livelihood is disrupted, our livelihood is disrupted. So it's been a heck of a ride. I think we would all agree. Well, I hope we would all agree that when this first kicked off back in March, well, maybe it was late February 2020, no one would have thought that 18 months later we'd still be here talking about this persistent virus that won't go away, that keeps shutting our doors. So, yeah, reflections. I mean, yeah, a heck of a journey, right? A heck of a journey. A lot of resilience built, I'd like to think, and a lot of determination exercise. But no, it's been a heck of a ride. But fingers crossed, we can see some light at the end of the tunnel now.
Now, like you say, you're partners. You're working pretty much day by day with some of the most influential, biggest, the best operators across the world. Ryan, you're speaking to them, and I suppose for them, they've been coming in and out of this depending upon their reopening strategies and sentiment in their country. But what is the kind of feedback you're getting from these operators? What do they think has changed? What do they think is still changing? How are they kind of reworking their businesses?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that the answer to that question is it really depends on where you are in the world, right? And the COVID situation, whilst no one's been immune from it, nowhere at this point has been completely immune from it. I think everyone's experience has been very different. I'm sitting here in Australia, where up until very recently we'd had what would be considered a pretty good run of it. Other than a handful of short, sharp lockdowns, with the exception of Melbourne, our second largest city. We've had a reasonably good run of keeping COVID out of the country, and as such, the closures were short in those markets. And this is pretty universal around the world, where the closures were short. We saw a pretty, like they call it that V-shaped recovery, right? A real quick return to what was normal, because the patterns weren't broken for as long, right? People's behavior wasn't as broken as long. When you flip and you look at other countries where or other markets where the closures were a lot longer, right? The initial closures were a lot longer. The early closures were a lot longer. The recovery is less of a V, right? It's not as sharp, because again, the consumer's patterns have shifted. I think things that we're seeing, a lot of the stuff that we thought would happen early on, which was all those weird perspex dividers between treadmills and all that. I think thankfully a lot of that stuff hasn't materialized as it relates to specifically to the business of group exercise, which is of course critical for Les Mills. I'll be honest with you, when this first kicked off, I was really worried about the future of exercising in groups, right? That seemed like something that if anything was going to go, or anything was going to be impacted within our industry, it would be that. We've actually seen the opposite. We've seen the opposite around the world, almost universally. People have flocked back to their classes. They've missed the social interaction of that they had with their instructors and with the participants in the class. They've missed the environment, the music and the stage and the sense of community that group exercise brings. So in that sense, that's been really positive. As far as what do we see, I mean, the general sentiment that I'm getting at the moment is people want some clarity, and until there's some clarity as to when this is going to end, we're still in a little bit of survival mode. We're still in a little bit of let's look ahead 1 month as opposed to look ahead 2 years. Again, that sentiment could be a little bit different in places like the US or the UK, which are further down the track with vaccination. But yeah, in this part of the world, APAC right now, it's a bit tough.
Yeah, we are seeing that here when it comes to members unfreezing, coming through that kind of period where they're looking to try and get back into fitness, and they don't quite have the confidence in a lot of the markets yet to try and go in and buy this year, 2-year membership. So very interesting to see this. Group X, of course, has done incredibly well through this pandemic, especially virtually. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the future of Group X, the future of content and programming? There has been such a monumental shift to digitalizing and hybridizing this content, and you've already been in that market for a number of years, but are you seeing any other kind of fundamental changes in how programming and content has to be set up and delivered?
Look, I think the fundamentals of group fitness are sound, right? And that may be self-serving because of where I sit, but I think, you know, per my earlier comment, the fundamentals of people wanting to gather in groups and have a shared experience, especially coming out of a lockdown kind of environment, you know, where you're at home isolated by yourself or with just your immediate family, the fundamentals are sound. And, you know, the fundamentals of programming, people want to do strength training, which is hard to do at home. People want to do high energy cardio, which is also hard to do at home. You know, so they'll go to the experts for the stuff that's harder to do at home. But what we definitely will see is people will consume, you know, more exercise at home more than they did 18 months ago, right? And that's just been accelerated by what we've all been through for the last year and a half, particularly in the countries that have been locked down for a long time. So as far as trends in programming go, what we're seeing at the moment, and this is backed up a little bit by some of the stats off Lesbos On Demand usage, you know, yoga and mind-body practices at home, not surprising, on the up, you know, and you know, if anyone who's ever practiced yoga or body balance or any of those types of programs, you know, it's a very internal focus, right? You know, the group effect is less important than, say, when you're doing body combat or body pump, where, you know, that energy of being surrounded by people is bigger. So I think what we feel is, as the dust settles on this, is there'll be an interesting hybrid model where you'll go to the gym or you'll go to the club for particular types of activities, but you might consume a few others at home. Not to mention, as I said earlier, you know, that people's pattern, you know, the change in people's patterns, I think we're only just waking up to this, right? That people might not be going to the office Monday to Friday, you know, and especially in the big cities around the world. And then what does that mean for us, the service providers, right? Does that mean that the class at 6 a.m. is no longer as popular as it used to be because no one's going Monday to Friday to the office? They have the flexibility to train at the time that they want to, as opposed to the time when the club dictates that they should train. Having said that, you know, a Monday night body pump class or RPM class will probably continue to be as popular as it was before, you know? So difficult to say, difficult for me to give insights into trends on programming, because I think we probably need a bit more time out of the pandemic to make those decisions. But certainly on where and when people exercise, I think it's pretty clear that things have shifted.
One of the interesting trends I saw, Ryan, is outdoor fitness, which has seemed to be driven by a lot of operators need to try and get outside to make sure they can utilize the outdoor space. What are your thoughts around outdoor fitness? It's always been around, I suppose, since the days of boot camps, but we've kind of rebranded it outdoor fitness and taken some machines and equipment outside. Do you think that's a short-term fad, or do you think there's a kind of long-term trend in that?
I think the answer to that, Ross, would be depends where you are in the world, right? You know, I think if you're, you know, again, from my perspective, sitting in Australia and being a North American originally, you know, outdoor fitness was already there. You know, boot camps in this part of the world and running outside and walking and, you know, working with your trainer in the park are a big part of what the way the fitness business works in Australia. They're essentially an extension of a club, right? And, you know, in North America, depending on where you are, in the northern part of North America, in the summer months, everyone wants to be outside, right? You know, you don't want to be inside because you're cooped up for so long of the year. Now, but if you flip that over to Southeast Asia, right? Or to certain parts of Asia or South America, where the climate just doesn't allow for as much outdoor fitness, I suspect it'll be a little bit more of a temporary thing in those markets. And as soon as this time passes, people will, and as soon as people feel comfortable to be inside again, right? You know, then the shift will be pretty quick, right? For anyone, I mean, you're sitting in Singapore, exercising outdoors in Singapore in the middle of the day is an exercise in perspiration and exhaustion, as it is in many other warm markets. Whereas in Australia, you can train comfortably outside all year, pretty much. So I think it'll really depend where you are, right? If you're in a market where it is possible, due to climate, and it is possible due to local, legislation, licensing requirements, I mean, you'd be crazy not to, right? I mean, what a great time to be outside.
Now, another kind of key advantage of COVID, a silver lining, has been this rush to digitalisation and making sure that content can be anywhere and everywhere for the members, Ryan. Now, you've always had your own product, should I say, and making sure people can access some great content through their clubs, but you've just released content, the new product coming out of Les Mills. Can you just quickly share some information about the content product, and then we'll dig a bit deeper into that?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, Les Mills On Demand is a product that's been in the market now for a couple of years, and I think I can say this openly, like, we're quite fortunate to have that in the market when COVID came around. That it was a product that had already been bubbling along in the background for a couple of years, and naturally COVID accelerated that. But we knew that Les Mills On Demand was just one channel to be able to get our class content into consumers' hands, and the channel that was missing was actually to be able to distribute that content through our club partners, right? Through our legacy, our club partners that we've been working with for, in some cases for more than 20 years, right? And the music licensing and various other reasons why it just wasn't possible to pull out the classes from Les Mills On Demand and hand them over to somebody else. So we had to do some work in the background there to create this product, which we're very creatively calling Les Mills Content, which essentially allows us to do what we would have loved to have done 18 months ago, and that's to extract the most popular or the most played classes on Les Mills On Demand and allow our club partners to host those classes in their own ecosystem. So it's video on demand, but it's an exciting development for us.
One of the phrases I've heard throughout this pandemic, Ryan, is produce the best and borrow the rest. Not everyone can create such a large library of content. When it comes to what you're offering for your clients, is this mostly for larger operators or smaller operators? Who can really benefit from content?
Well, the truth is, I mean, we believe this product will be suitable for anyone who engages with the Les Mills suite of classes, right? So, and that can be the guys at the high end of town, the multi-site operators across borders versus, a single site operator anywhere in the world, right? We believe this is having video on demand that you can host in your own ecosystem is a really important extension of what you're doing live in the club. And it's no surprise, I guess, that the most popular classes on Les Mills On Demand are the ones that are most popular in the club, right? And they're the ones that you would expect. And people love these workouts and they want to do them in the club and they want to do them at home. So for us, we really strongly believe in this opportunity that a club can offer those workouts for people when they can't make it into the gym within their own ecosystem. So really, really important development.
Now let's talk about royalty-free music, because many operators we've spoken to from across the last 15 months, when they did try and digitize and hybridize their offering, one of the biggest obstacles they came into was royalty-based fees onto music providers. What are your thoughts around royalty-free music, Ryan, and how have you tried to fix this problem?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's ever been involved in any kind of music licensing for any aspect of business would understand what a nightmare it is, right? And this is something that we've been very proud of over the years. It's something we've worked very hard on is creating music. So the way we solved it is we've actually created our own royalty-free music, right? We have a recording studio and a whole music team that are based in New Zealand. And we've had to create brand new music for these class files that we're licensing in the content product. The reason for that is we have a suite of original artist music that we license, and we have cover versions of the original artist music that we license, but neither of those we're allowed to distribute outside of our own ecosystem. So for us to be able to hand over the class files to essentially hand over the class files to a customer for them to distribute, we had to create a whole new stream of music. So these class files, this Les Mills content product, is created with royalty-free music, which really gives our club partners the freedom to be able to, flex it and distribute them in a way that they see fit. What are my thoughts on royalty-free music? I mean, it's tough to do. It's hard to do. It's hard to do in a meaningful way. It's hard to do unless that is what you do, right? And similar, I would say it's in a similar vein to actually creating content, right? Unless you're in the business of creating content, it's an incredibly difficult and expensive and hard thing to do, right? Which is where we think we come in.
Now, you just touched on that there, Ryan, cost. I think a lot of operators, when they start this journey, perhaps they see an initial cost, but of course, sustaining a library of content and producing that content, especially as they now see themselves reopening, is quite an arduous task. Is that something that you've seen some of your operator partners where they perhaps initially invested, then they suddenly realize the scale of the investment that it takes to keep relevant, keep topical, and maybe keep producing this? What are your thoughts in terms of how some operators have tried this and perhaps maybe not understood the ramifications?
Oh, Ross, I mean, everybody's tried, right? Everybody's tried. And this is even before digital, right? This is, I mean, we've weathered the storm. We know we've been producing content. I mean, Les Mills has been in business for 50 years, but producing content distributed all around the world since the late 90s, And if you have a look at our suite of content, we haven't missed a quarter in many cases since the program was launched. So we release our content quarterly. And I think we actually need to get better at saying this as a brand. We also didn't miss a quarter through COVID. Right? We didn't miss a quarter through COVID. We filmed every quarter all the way through. Filming looks very different, or looked very different 12 months ago than it did 2 years ago. But we really are committed to that. And that is, again, part of the reason of the success of the brand and of the programming, that we're committed to this quarterly update. So I've seen direct competitors, so other people in the group exercise space, come and go. Once they miss a quarter, they say, we're going to produce every 2 months. They miss one, and then before you know it, they've missed two, and then they've missed four, and then the program's not relevant anymore, and it falls to pieces. I've seen club operators time and time again do it. Why do they do that? Well, because it's hard to do. It's hard, and for most club operators, well, actually probably the majority of club operators, there'd be a few examples where it's not their core business. Right? Producing the content, the exercise content, is not their core business, right? Their core business is servicing their members, right? And I think if it's not your core business, and of course our content, our class content, that is our core business. That is all we do, right? When it's your core business, you always just have that advantage over everybody else. So yeah, I've seen people come and go. I've seen people come and go over the last 18 months, and I think we'll continue to see people come and go. There's a few examples I've seen overseas, particularly in the US, where the market is so much bigger. And I suppose the boutiques would be another example of people who do continually create content on a regular basis, but outside of that, not many.
Yeah, it's an interesting trend we're seeing as well. The boutiques, perhaps not maybe the international franchise boutiques, but some of the smaller players who did a great job initially of coming into the space and offering their members some digital and hybrid services. As soon as they reopened, it's all of a sudden a nice to have, not a need to have. And so really interesting to see how many of these guys sustain the offerings for any more than the next 6 to 12 months. And I think, as you rightly point out, Ryan, the quality of content is only getting better. And I think that will knock more and more people out of the way. Now, let's look at integration. You've got content and the product. Yep. You've of course got on demand. You've obviously got your classes in person. How does this all integrate from an operational standpoint? I mean, some people might think, okay, it's a great product, but I mean, how the hell do I integrate this? How do they?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I mean, I think the probably the easiest way to think about it, the actual, and it's confusing because the name of this product we've called Les Mills content. But if you think of our class content as our product, this is just another distribution channel, right? So the core of our business and the pinnacle of the Les Mills experience will always be a live instructor-led class. There's nothing that will ever come up to sort of yeah, that is the pinnacle of our experience. You then, underneath that, you have in-club virtual, right? So where members might come into a club, consume the same class content, but there's no instructor, there's a screen, and they consume it that way. And then at home, whether it's through the content product or through Les Mills On Demand, just really underpins the whole piece. So it's as far as how they integrate it, I mean, it's part of the Les Mills solution now. If you're a Les Mills club partner, in my mind anyway, you'd be crazy to not be exploring all three solutions, because again, it solves your content issue. It solves your content issue around when, what is the instructor going to turn up and teach? And then you can have the in-club virtual, which backs it up with the same programming and the same content piece, let alone your members are exercising at home, consuming the same product. I mean, it's just a really nice vertical integration in my mind, but then again, I am biased.
Well, folks, after this interview, we've got a quick video to show a little bit more about the content piece. Ryan, our closing question to you. Let's take the last 12 months for you personally. Now, of course, it's been incredibly tough, but you've had to lead a team. You've also had to lead a cult, if you will, of Les Mills instructors, who are one of the most incredible group of people we've ever met, true champions and advocates for your brand and your mission and your vision. How difficult has it been for you as a business leader to try and get through these last 12 months? What have you leaned on to do so?
Oh, that's quite the question, isn't it? Look, I'm actually, what do I lean on? I mean, look, there's no two ways about it. It's been difficult. It's been disruptive. I have to say, I'm very fortunate. I live in Australia. We've had, as I said at the beginning of this, I personally have had a pretty good run of it, in the sense that the fear of COVID is not ever present as it has been. And I should say the fear of contracting COVID is not as ever present as it has been for many others, and shout out to my close colleagues in KL and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, who are they're having a rough ride right about now. This is a tough time for Malaysia and many other countries around the world. But what I've leaned on is the absolute commitment and passion for fitness, first of all, that I sense in our community, and then more specifically for our brand. You said it beautifully in that question. Our team of instructors, our global team of instructors and staff members, all around the globe, are absolutely committed to doing whatever it takes, so that our industry sees it through, and so that our brand, our company, sees it through as well. And I'm super impressed every day when I turn up to the office, whether it's virtually or in person. I'm fortunate to be able to be in an office. I see people just turn up day by day, but what do we need to do to get through this? And 18 months later, we're still asking those questions, and we're still turning, and we're still pivoting. And I think that for lesser industries and lesser brands, this might not be possible. So that's what I lean on. I lean on others. I get my strength from people. So yeah, tough time, and still tough times ahead. But I do feel 18 months in, we will get through this. We will get through this. If we're still standing here 18 months in, what's another 6-12 months? I say that now. Ask me again in January.
Yeah. Look, Ryan, I think I couldn't agree more with that aspect. It's been a long road, but the reality is that the sun will shine brighter in the next few months, and by 2022, I think for a lot of the markets that we work in, these will be fantastic years ahead for our industry. Look, really appreciate the time, and thanks for an update on content. Ladies and gentlemen, there'll be a quick video after this, so you can tune in, and there'll be tags to Ryan and the team to make sure you can connect with them directly. But Ryan, as always, pal, really appreciate your time. Good to see you well, and look forward to seeing you face to face soon.
I hope so, and thanks for the opportunity, Ross.
I take the weight on my shoulders as I feel the sky come down.